Welcome to my channel. Fearless Nation. When we talk about solitude, most people immediately think of loneliness. They imagine being cut off, isolated, perhaps even abandoned. But solitude, true solitude, is not the absence of people, it is the presence of yourself. It is the moment when you stop running from yourself and instead begin to listen to the quieter voices inside. Carl Jung understood this profoundly. He taught us that the unconscious, the deeper layers of our being that carry both our wounds and our treasures, cannot be heard in the constant noise of everyday availability. It emerges in the silence. When you stop being endlessly available to everyone else, something extraordinary begins to happen. At first, it might feel uncomfortable. The phone rings and you don't answer. A text comes in and you don't reply right away. That sudden spaciousness can feel like you're letting people down. You may even feel guilty. But with time, you realize that what you are actually doing is allowing yourself the dignity of your own company. And in that quiet, you meet parts of yourself that have been waiting, sometimes for years, to be acknowledged. Jung called this process individuation, the journey of becoming whole. And wholeness requires solitude. Because when you are always available to the demands of others, you become fragmented. You scatter yourself in pieces, this piece to your work, that piece to your family, another piece to your friends, until eventually you are so spread thin that you lose sight of your own center. Solitude is the way back to that center. It is the way you gather yourself together again. Now, I know solitude can be frightening. Many people avoid it at all costs because they are afraid of what they might find in the quiet. Maybe you felt it too, the moment you turn off the distractions, the deeper fears, regrets, or unanswered questions rise up. And yet, what Jung reminds us is that those shadows are not enemies, they are teachers. Every part of you that you silence by staying busy is the very part of you that longs to bring wisdom, healing, and creativity into your life. Think about it this way, if you are always saying yes to others, when do you ever hear the yes that your soul is whispering to you? If you are always rushing to be there for everyone else, when do you ever feel the quiet pulse of your own heartbeat telling you where you belong? Solitude is not a punishment, it is the invitation home. And something incredible begins to shift when you honor that invitation. You begin to see more clearly what truly matters. Without the constant noise of other people's needs and opinions, your own values rise to the surface. You realize that some of the things you thought were urgent were never important. Some of the people you thought you had to chase were never aligned with you. In solitude, illusions fall away. And when illusions fall away, truth stands there, simple, undeniable, waiting for you to recognize it. There is also another miracle of solitude, creativity. Jung himself entered into what he called active imagination during times of solitude, dialogues with the images, symbols, and voices that emerged from his unconscious. He believed that in those inner conversations, the psyche revealed itself in profound ways. And you don't have to be a psychologist to experience this. Sit alone for long enough, and your mind begins to dream, to wonder, to imagine. Suddenly, you see solutions you couldn't see before. You find yourself writing words you didn't know were in you. Music, art, ideas, they emerge when the noise quiets down. That's why so many of the world's great leaders, artists, and thinkers carved out time for solitude. Oprah herself often speaks about how essential stillness is to her spiritual clarity. Great mystics retreated to the desert. Writers go to cabins in the woods. Scientists, too, rely on solitude for breakthroughs. Because when you remove yourself from the constant pull of availability, your mind begins to reorganize itself around deeper truths. And let's be honest, we live in a culture that fears solitude. We equate being alone with being forgotten. We think if we are not constantly visible, constantly present in everyone else's lives, we will somehow disappear. But the paradox is this, the more you disappear into the noise of availability, the less people truly see you. When you stand firm in solitude, when you are willing to say, I will not always be at your beck and call, people begin to see you more clearly. They respect your time. They value your presence. They recognize that you are not just a background character in their story, you are the author of your own. There is power in absence. When you step back, you teach people how to step forward. When you are no longer endlessly available, others have to rise to the occasion, to take responsibility for their own lives, their own emotions, their own growth. Your absence becomes their opportunity to grow. And your solitude becomes your opportunity to grow. But solitude is not just about other people learning to value you, it is about you learning to value yourself. It's about realizing that your energy is sacred. That you don't have to explain why you need a day, or a week, or even longer to yourself. That silence is not selfish. It is self-preservation. It is self-creation. And yes, solitude can be uncomfortable. Sometimes it will feel like loss. Sometimes it will feel like emptiness. But remember, the seed must rest in the dark soil before it can sprout. Solitude is that soil. What feels like emptiness is actually fullness in disguise. It is the place where the unconscious stirs, where intuition begins to speak, where the fragments of your being knit themselves together again. Imagine what happens when you embrace this. Imagine a life where your worth is no longer measured by how quickly you reply to a message, but by how deeply you are rooted in your own truth. Imagine relationships where you are not drained by overgiving, but instead nourished by authentic exchange. Imagine waking up in the morning and feeling whole, not because someone else validated you, but because in your solitude, you found yourself. This is what changes when you stop being endlessly available. Solitude transforms you from the inside out. It teaches you discernment, what to say yes to, what to say no to. It teaches you resilience, how to be with yourself without fear. It teaches you creativity, how to listen to the whispers of your imagination. And it teaches you love, not the love that comes from others, but the love that flows when you finally learn to befriend your own soul. And so I want you to remember this: absence is not a void, it is a force. Solitude is not loneliness, it is liberation. When you step into that quiet, you are not losing the world, you are gaining yourself. And when you gain yourself, everything around you changes. Because here is the truth: when you stop being available to everyone else, you finally become available to the one person who matters most, you. So take the time. Carve out the silence. Sit with the discomfort until it turns into wisdom. Trust the process of solitude, because it will not abandon you. It will grow you. And in the end, when you walk back into the world, you will no longer come as someone desperate to be seen. You will come as someone who has already seen themselves. You will come as someone whole. And wholeness, that is what changes everything. You see, what solitude gives us is not simply rest from the noise of others. It gives us the opportunity to hear the music that has been playing within us all along. And once you hear it, you realize that life was never meant to be lived only in reaction to the demands of other people. Life was meant to be lived from the inside out. Carl Jung said, "Who looks outside, dreams, who looks inside, awakes." That awakening does not happen in the crowd. It happens in the stillness. It happens in the moments when you dare to sit with yourself long enough to notice what is truly alive in you. Solitude, then, is not a withdrawal from life. It is a return to life, a deeper one, a life that belongs to you. Let me give you a story. Years ago, I spoke with a woman who had built her entire identity on being available to others. She was the dependable friend, the always there daughter, the perfect colleague. Her phone never stopped ringing. And she prided herself on answering every call, on showing up to every invitation, on saying yes even when her body was screaming no. Then one day, her health broke down. She found herself exhausted, depleted, unable to get out of bed. And in that forced solitude, she met herself for the first time. She told me, "I realized I had been living as a supporting character in everyone else's play. I had no idea who I was in my own story. Her words are not unique. They speak to so many of us. And maybe they speak to you. Because when you live on the constant edge of availability, you rob yourself of the opportunity to become the main character in your own life. Solitude, in its quiet and sometimes uncomfortable way, hands you back the pen. It says, write your own story. Define your own role. Decide what matters to you. Now, let's be honest. Our culture doesn't celebrate solitude. We celebrate visibility. We celebrate busyness. We celebrate the endless hustle of always being reachable, always being productive, always being on. But let me ask you, what happens when the applause fades, when the emails stop, when the phone is silent? Who are you then? That's the question solitude answers. It strips away the masks, the performances, the external validations. It forces you to sit with your unadorned self. And if you are patient, if you are courageous enough to stay with that self, you begin to discover something remarkable, that you are far richer, far deeper, far more resilient than you ever knew. Think about how nature works. A tree does not grow in the spotlight of constant attention. It grows in silence, roots deepening invisibly underground before branches ever stretch toward the sky. In the same way, solitude is the soil of your soul. It is where your unseen growth takes place. Without it, you may look busy and active on the outside, but on the inside, you remain shallow, unrooted, fragile. Solitude grounds you. It deepens you. It makes you whole. And yet, most of us are afraid of it. We fill our days with distractions. The endless scroll of social media, the compulsive checking of messages, the constant background noise of television or podcasts, anything to keep us from being alone with ourselves. Why? Because being alone with yourself means facing the parts of you you've been avoiding. The disappointments. The doubts. The desires you've suppressed. But here's the truth, those very parts are not meant to be avoided. They are meant to be integrated. They are the hidden doors to your transformation. Jung called this process shadow work, facing the aspects of ourselves we prefer to ignore. And solitude is the stage on which that work takes place. In the quiet, the shadow surfaces. Not to torment you, but to teach you. Not to shame you, but to remind you that even the parts you've hidden carry wisdom. The anger you suppress may be telling you where your boundaries need to be drawn. The sadness you bury may be pointing you toward unhealed grief. The longing you deny may be calling you toward a truer life. But you can't hear any of it if you are constantly drowning in the noise of availability. Let me pause and ask you this, when was the last time you sat in stillness, not to consume, not to perform, but simply to be? When was the last time you let your phone stay unanswered, your calendar stay open, your environment stay silent long enough for your own voice to emerge? Solitude is not an escape from life. It is a rehearsal for life. It teaches you how to be with yourself so that when you are with others, you can bring your whole self, not a fractured, exhausted, resentful version, but a grounded, clear, present version. Solitude makes you available in the right way, available not to every demand, but to the deeper callings of your soul. And when you honor that, the world notices. People begin to interact with you differently. They sense your strength. They sense your boundaries. They sense that you are not desperate for their approval, because you have already found something unshakable within. That shift is magnetic. It changes the dynamics of relationships, careers, and communities. There is a sacred paradox here, the more you embrace solitude, the less lonely you become. Because loneliness is not the absence of people. Loneliness is the absence of connection, first and foremost, connection to yourself. Solitude heals loneliness because it reintroduces you to the one person you cannot live without, you. And once you know how to be with yourself, you discover a new freedom. You realize you don't have to chase people. You don't have to beg for attention. You don't have to exhaust yourself proving your worth. You simply stand in your truth. And from that place, the relationships that remain in your life are those that honor your truth, not exploit your availability. This is the quiet revolution solitude offers. It shifts the entire foundation of your being. And that shift, my friends, is what changes everything.